now what I can do, I'm going to collapse that so we're not looking at the whole thing. And now what I want to do is I actually want to switch this so that it is not facing us like this. Because if you look, I want to show you something. You should have this little secondary view up here, and what it does is by default it's going to start off in what's referred to as the orthographic, or some people also call it orthogonal view. And you see this little icon here. It shows what view you're looking at. Right now we're looking at the top view. And if I sort of expand this out a little bit bigger, it tells me how wide this is, it tells me how deep the extrusion is, and so forth. All right, so that's pretty cool. And then you see this red line, that's where the axis is, so that means that that's how far off the axis this really is. All right, and anyway, that's how the shadow is being cast, because it automatically puts these image-based lights on them, and it creates a basic ambient lighting so that you can see what you're doing. All right, now I'm going to sort of screen that back a little bit, or resize that. And what I want to do is I actually want to take my logo here, and I want to be able to rotate this. And if I take my tools that are available up here, and these, by the way, are only going to be available as long as you have the Move tool selected over here in the left, Normal Tool panel. So in 3D mode, you get all of these different tools, and if you refer back to the tutorial, you know, they'll explain a little bit more about what these tools do. I'm not going to take up too much time trying to explain it in this video. But you can also, you know, maybe in something that is just a practice file, play with these. Anyway, so I'm going to choose the rotate tool. Also, if you hover over these, it'll tell you, you know, which tools these are. And so you can start to understand what those things mean. So anyway, I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis. And if there are two different ways of kind of doing this, and you see if I hover in just the right spots, see how the tool options change? Like, and it tells you a tooltip, like this is going to scale uniformly, this is going to move it on the x-axis, all right, up and down. This is going to move it on the z-axis. All right, anyway, but if I get right about here, I get this little rotational icon, and it says rotate around the x-axis. And if I pull it up, you see what's happening is it starts to rotate it up, and you can see the ground plane underneath where it now has that shadow. Also, you'll notice in black next to the little dial, the little tool icon at the top, it's saying rotate X, and it shows me the delta, and then it shows me the degree of rotation. Well, sometimes it's really hard to get it like right where you want it, and I'm trying to get it on 90, and so it keeps bumping around, so I'm just going to let it go. And what I can do to get it to be perfect is I can, while it's selected, while my logo is selected here, I'll go over here to this icon that says, if you hold over it, it says coordinates. I'll click on that, and then I can change the X degree to 90. So that's my rotational degree, so that it's a perfect 90 degrees, okay? So anyway, that's how that works. And now this thing is floating up above, which is pretty cool, okay? And now what I can do is I can also, I want to marry these two things together so that I'm not looking at this item in this direction while, you know, the big rusted steel panel is behind it in a different position. What I want to do is I want to actually click over here in my secondary view where it says swap main and secondary views. I want to click on that. And then automatically what it does is it changes it so that now my postcard and my stamp or my logo are basically sort of in the same planes, which is good. That's what I want. Now, to get this positioned inside of the picture frame, what I need to do up here is I want to take this tool where it says drag 3D object. I want to take that tool, and if I hover over here, you see it says move on y-axis. I'm going to move that up until it's in about the right spot. Okay, And the other thing that you'll notice too is that if you look in this secondary view, it looks like it's floating up in the air. I want to make sure that this logo is sitting on the ground so that it's going to basically be attached to the ground plane. So if I go where it says appear to 3D, I can say move object to ground plane. Okay. And then now you can see in the secondary view what it's done is now that object is sitting on the ground plane. And then if you wanted to do that with the dark rusted steel, you could also do that with the dark rusted steel. You could make sure that it is also sitting on the ground plane, which it already is, but that gives you some better understanding. Okay. Okay, so now that we have that set up on the ground plane for both of those objects, we can actually go ahead and merge them. It's kind of important that we do merge them because if we don't, then we can't really manipulate them as a single item together. So let's go ahead and in our normal layers panel, let's go ahead and choose the logo and the dark rusted steel. And if for some reason these aren't side by side with each other, in your layers panel, then you can go ahead and rearrange the order so that they are next to each other. And I want to select both of those holding down Shift and then go up here to 3D and say merge 3D layers. Okay, and then it does this weird thing with the lights. It sort of has to combine the lights in a strange way, and then it takes me back to having my secondary view be in a top orthogonal mode or orthographic mode. So what we can do right off the bat, first of all, you'll see that it took the dark rusted steel layer name. So I'm going to just change this layer name, and I'm going to call it, I'll call it logo completed or logo complete or something like that. Okay, and then now whenever I go over to, I'll select it and I go over to 3D panel and I'm in my scene view. Okay. You'll see that I have, as part of that, I have my dark rusted steel mesh still, and I have my logo. But the other thing too is that if you click on environment, right now the light looks really weird. And so what I want to do is go up here where it says IBL, and that's going to be these image-based lights. It did something really weird trying to, you know, combine all those lights together. So I'm going to turn that off. And yours is probably going to go black like mine did, and it's not that it deleted anything, it's just that there's no light in the room. There's no light in the scene. And so just like in a regular environment, when you turn all the lights off, it goes dark. So what we need to do is create new light so that while we have our environment selected, we can go down to the light bulb right here, or you can also do it here as well. All right, you can choose the environment like that if you want. But anyway, no matter what, we're going to add a new light source to the scene. And I'm going to choose infinite light. And that is sort of like ambient light. It is a computer's kind of best guess at creating an ambient light environment, kind of like the way that sometimes, I don't know, you just have ambient light in a room, but maybe you can't distinguish where the source is. Or, you know, sunlight, but you can't distinguish where the sun is, you know, sort of like on a cloudy day or something. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and you can grab this handle and you can manipulate where your light sourcing is. Probably it's going to come sort of from the top somewhere, you know. Anyway, so I'm not going to make mine too dramatic. The other thing that you can do too is you can change the color so that it's not the stark white color. If you wanted to drag it over a little bit, you can give it sort of a more natural color, maybe somewhere in the yellow range or like sort of like a sunlight range or something, so that it's not so cold. And I'll be okay with that. I think it's a little bit better. The other thing that I can do too is I can turn up the intensity if I wanted to. So instead of 100%, I could do like, I don't know, like 120%. It's a little bit brighter. It's really up to you how you want to adjust that. You can mess with the shadow softness. Okay, and so if I go back here over to scene now, I can select my object and you see that it automatically opens up the scene for me and it grabs my logo. But if I click on the entire scene, you know, I could also add another light source if I wanted to, if I wanted to add a spot, because a lot of times there are multiple light sources, you know, in a space. And so if I click this and kind of move it around, I can change where the spot is. You see the yellow, it's rotational. And then if I just, you know, take this and actually if I grab the cone angle, you can see hotspot angle, the cone angle, so you can make it a much bigger angle, right? And that what that is, the cone angle, it increases what's called the penumbra with a light source. All right, so anyway, there are a lot of things that you can do with this. You can also move it on its different axes, right? So I can pull it further out. You can see also that I can rotate it. And what you want to be able to do if you're going to mess with these is you're going to want to be able to grab the correct axis point. You see where it's got these different axes, and if you hover it, it's going to tell you which one you're about to move. All right, and then you can also just move the whole thing as well. You can have it rotate, and then if you rotate it in the wrong direction, it's going to be behind it. That's not what you're going to want. So anyway, so you kind of have to be a little bit careful how you move this around if you're going to use one of these. And now I can pull it back a little bit to give it a more realistic perspective. All right, so it could be something like this. Anyway, so you can add multiple lights, and you also might have problems if you add too many lights because it's more processing for your scene. So just be aware of that. But that gives me a much more realistic kind of shadow, I think. And the other thing that I could do is I could turn the intensity of this down, so maybe it's not quite so bright. And I can also change the color of this as well, so that this is sort of a yellower light. And maybe even slightly orange as well, okay? All right, so, you know, maybe this is what I've got so far. I'm gonna go ahead and save it so that I don't lose anything that I've done so far. All right, and I'm going to scroll back up here, and now that I have this whole scene set, I can click on current view, and I can start, now that this whole thing is one object, since I grouped everything and combined them together for the layers, I can take this current view and I can take my rotational tool and I can start to rotate it in a 3D space now as a single object. And what you're seeing behind there is, remember, I never turned off the color, or excuse me, I never turned off the visibility for that rusted, painted rusty postcard. But you can see how if I start to move this around, you know, I get this really interesting looking, you know, wall. You know, so you could have something like this where you've got this big wall that is just sort of, you know, standing up. Like you could do that. You can also move it, you know, so that it's like a wall that you're looking down on. That's one option. So, you know, and then if you wanted to go back over here to layers, you could turn off this. And then, you know, you've got this other weird thing behind there. You'd have to figure out some other kind of image if you were to do something like this. But that wasn't what we originally had planned. So I'm going to go ahead here and take my rotational tool, and you can start to see, and right now I'm below the ground plane. All right, so and then I can also grab, here, let me sort of, let me grab this secondary view window and make it smaller. And I can also grab like different tools to manipulate the scene a little bit so that we can better see what we're looking at. And so I can also zoom in or zoom out here, all right, with this zoom tool. And let's just move some stuff around a little bit. So maybe it's kind of sitting a little bit outside the frame, and, you know, anyway, so this gives you an idea of some of the things that you can do. Let's make it a little bit smaller, maybe like that. So really it's up to you and how you want to do this.